This presentation will serve as a resource and a training and something to be able to look back at for curriculum mapping and build your own curriculum. Notice that there is a link at the bottom of the website in which you can access Build Your Own Curriculum. The purpose of the presentation is to provide you with an overview of how we do curriculum mapping here in Pulaski, to also provide you with an overview of Build Your Own Curriculum and what features are available, the technology that's used, as well as the terminology available, and overall to just provide consistency in how we map our curriculum and then how it's entered into Build Your Own Curriculum so that it is consistent for all of the users. As we fine-tune our curriculum mapping process and try to be more consistent in what we enter into Build Your Own Curriculum, these are some of the guiding principles that we hope to accomplish. Making it a living, breathing tool for learning, making sure that we've aligned our curriculum to the standards that we've adopted, whether they be local, state, or national, that we've had an opportunity for teachers to share curriculum not only within our district, but as well as sharing those with other districts and gathering and tweaking curriculum that we find from their districts as well, and that it really becomes a valuable tool to its audiences, whether it be our students, parents, teachers, and administrators. The features that we find valuable in Build Your Own Curriculum as we try to have that consistent warehouse of our curriculum maps is that it was designed by a team of teachers from Menasha, and actually the owner of the company is Chris Trina, who is a parent of former Pulaski students. It also supports and is linked by standards that we use, whether they're the Common Core standards or in the future Next Generation Science standards or career and technical education, as well as other local, state, and national standards. Another nice feature of it is that if you find a curriculum map from another district, you're able to copy it into yours and then make changes as well as if you're working with other teachers in your same content area, you're able to share maps as well with other districts. Build Your Own Curriculum is actually used by several of the area school districts here in Wisconsin, and so in Northeast Wisconsin as well, so we're not the only district using it. You'll find that many districts in our area have either went with Build Your Own Curriculum or Curriculum Companion. The curriculum instruction and assessment model really is a 360-degree improvement model because these all play in and can happen at different times. But when we're looking at developing our curriculum, we really are taking into account several of these things, such as the existing curriculum, any new knowledge that we've gained, the input from our stakeholders, and then taking a look at those standards, government-adopted standards on the state level, as well as local adopted standards, and those all help to drive our curriculum. That is actually, when we look at this, the curriculum and the instructional activities are what we put into Build Your Own Curriculum and become part of our curriculum maps. What you do day in and day out, though, in your classrooms is the instructional activities. So that's breaking it down into the units and then the topics and then those specific learning targets which are aligned to the standards and that we assess on a daily basis, or the formative assessments, so we know what students are able to do, what they know, and the skills that they've developed. And obviously that all results in the student learning. But in order to know whether students are learning, you have to take into account assessment for learning and assessment of learning. The assessment for learning is more of your formative assessment, or as Rick Stiggins likes to call it, the physical checkup. So you're able to make adjustments based on that physical checkup. Or how he also terms assessment of learning is the autopsy. That's like your standardized assessments that our students take that happen after the fact, and you make adjustments based on that after the fact. And so when we take all that into account, it really becomes a 360-degree improvement model of our curriculum and our assessment in our district. When curriculum mapping, what we're really looking at is something that's called understanding by design, or probably a simpler term to understand is backward design. And what we mean by that is really what you're looking at is the desired results that you want within that course, the evidence that's going to show that you've achieved those desired results, and then you build the learning plan based on that. Backwards design, what it helps do is avoid some of the common pitfalls that we sometimes fall into, and that the textbook becomes our curriculum rather than being the resource that helps us to teach the curriculum. helps us avoid just doing activity after activity, but not really having it aligned to any learning target or standard or to the assessment that we're looking at. So again, the understanding by design really is based on alignment, as you'll see in this next slide. So this graphic shows you the backward design process with 3 simple stages of that process. First of all, like we mentioned, it's looking at those desired results. When a student takes that course, what are the desired results, those 3 to 5 big ideas or enduring understandings that you want students to really gain that will be of value to them years down the road. And then it's that evidence that you know that that is actually happening, or alignment to the assessment part of it. And then when you have those things in place, and then and only then is where you start to plan the learning experiences and the instruction that is going to help you bridge the desired results in the assessment in happening. This graphic shows you the typical area when we map our curriculum, what we sometimes do, and where we dig right into identifying the content. So right away we look at what units we're going to have and what topics are going to fall within those units. And then we start to brainstorm the activities that will happen within those units and topics before we've really looked at what the desired results are, or we've aligned it to the standards, or we've decided how we'll know whether students are able to have that knowledge or be able to do those skills that we want them to be able to do. Throughout the presentation today, we've put more information in about backwards design and hopefully guiding you through the process as you develop your curriculum map of taking a close look at the stage 1 results and identifying those desired results, and then looking at the evidence, and then planning those learning experiences and instruction. There's some great guiding questions on this slide, which again we've incorporated throughout this presentation that hopefully keep you coming back to these stages before you jump ahead to the next stage. When doing your work in your curriculum maps for the courses that you've chosen to work on, there really are 4 key components, or what we would say is the heavy lifting or the bulk of the work that you'll spend time on in developing that curriculum map. First of all, in forefront, whether it's prior to working on your map, during your map, or when you're finished with your map, we really want to make sure that there's been a focus on the standards within your content areas. Some of those include our information technology and literacy skills, or our technology standards. For many of you, it'll include the Common Core ELA literacy in the content areas. So what we are going to do for literacy in social studies, science, CTE, as well as the other areas, as well as your specific content area standards that are available to you. And when you're doing that, we kind of talk about it as a front-loading and a back-loading of the standards. So having them in before you even start the process, and again, looking at them at the end when you're looking at the learning targets. Another key component of what you'll be working on, and it really takes precedence when you're developing your map, is getting those 3 to 5 big ideas and converting them then into your enduring understandings for that course. And so that's probably a good 25% of the job that you're going to be doing with your map. Then once you've developed the actual units, it's looking at those essential questions, the how and the why questions that of why that unit is of value to students. And each of these we'll spend more time on, obviously, because they are such big components of that. And then finally, where you'll probably spend another good 25% of your time is looking at the learning targets and making sure that you've linked them to the assessments and the activities and the standards as well. And so that's kind of the backloading of the standards in this process as well. Let's spend some time on some curriculum terminology that's associated with curriculum mapping as well as with BYOC. This triangle that we're going to form and discuss really is the background or the backbone of BYOC and helps you keep track of what information you're putting in to your curriculum map. And so the first area that we're going to focus on is the grade /area or course. And that, depending on which level that you're at, might look a little bit differently. At the K-5 level, it's generally the grade level and the content areas as we take a closer look at that. And then when you get into your middle school and your high school levels, it might be the specific courses that are in the course description books and available for students to take as classes. learning targets are going to be at the forefront again of what you're working on. Those being the key concepts and the knowledge and skills and very specific statements of what you want students to know or be able to do. And we'll spend, again, more time on the learning target because it is such an important part of the curriculum. Obviously, another part of your curriculum map is the units, and those are basically the subunits or topics of the course that need to be covered. So again, we have two examples here for you, and sticking with the math one, of algebra being a 612 example, but when you look at the units, it might be on linear functions, or if we're dealing with elementary math, numeration being the unit that you would focus on. And as we proceed, then we add on the topics that fall within each of those units. So again, those are like subunit of units that cover the learning targets that you've established. And so again, it proceeds to give you a further example on that numeration unit. We'd get deeper into it with fractions, or if we're dealing with the 612 example of the linear functions, which were the unit, now focusing closer on slope or rate of change. So your curriculum writing process takes all of those into account, and it is in a triangle format where you can see you really start at the top with the course, you proceed through the units, the topics, and then the learning targets being a focus of your curriculum map. And as I mentioned previously, even though on this triangle they show the district standards or benchmarks and your state or national standards that have been adopted to be at the bottom of this triangle, it really happens in two places. It happens at the top of this chart as well, because you have to keep those in mind as you're developing your courses and deciding which standards are taught in each of the places. But then it also comes into play when you're developing your learning targets, in that you're aligning it, that specific learning target within that unit and that topic to those standards as well. So again, just to show it to you in a different format, and again, it's a mathematics example, but gives you an idea that math is your content. Then when you start to develop out your units, you've got decimals as a unit. When you get specific within the unit, there happens to be the topic that of order of the decimals. And then when we look at the learning target, it gets to be in student-friendly terms of I will understand the value of the number based on the placement of the decimal. And then you can see the specific activity that this class would be doing is going on a decimal hunt. And so hopefully that gives you another view of, when you're laying out your curriculum map, the components that play a part of that map. One thing we try to do in this curriculum mapping process to make it more consistent, no matter who's entering the information and which department is doing it, is some common questions or statements to look at within each of these. And so there's a document that I have a link on one of the upcoming slides, which kind of takes the terminology and the components of the curriculum map and explains them a little bit broader. So for example, if we jump down to within the course and we take a look at 21st century rigor and relevance, in our district we've really talked a lot about the 4 C's, whether it's access to content, it's critical thinking, creativity, and collaboration. And you can see some guiding questions that as you're developing the curriculum map, that you'd be able to look back and ask yourself if you've included that in your curriculum map and how that pertains to the students that would be taking that course. So after the course part of the curriculum map becomes the unit component of it. And you can see within that is the unit description, the essential questions in learning, the academic language and disciplinary vocabulary, strategies to assess the student learning, and then your unit materials, resources, and technology. And again, there's statements of items that you want to make sure that you include in your curriculum map. There might also be questions that you're ensuring that you're asking or you're ensuring that are a part of your curriculum map when you are looking at the unit. The last slide of the triangle deals with the topics and the learning targets. Those are kind of intertwined together when you take a look at that. So the topic has the description, but it also links to the learning target as well as the activities being included in there. And the learning target has the assessments and the activities. This is one part of Build Your Own Curriculum that we would obviously like to change, because generally the assessments and the activities and the standards go right with the learning target, and the activities are included with that as well. Again, there's those key statements which help you to keep in mind what should be entered in that part of the curriculum map when you're putting it into the paper version or within Build Your Own Curriculum as well into the computer version of it. Realizing that several of you preferred to enter in on paper and pencil before actually putting it into the computer and kind of having that layout of it, we do have templates that you can use. Again, the link is on the PowerPoint where you can access those and print them off. There's also a template where you can copy it and you can type it in as well as if you'd like to do it that route. Again, what we tried to do is, and it's a little bit different than what's in Build Your Own Curriculum, but not very much. But we tried to, again, bring that enduring understanding to the forefront of your curriculum map so that you don't jump right into the units and start to plan that part out. Again, keeping that backward design in the forefront of your curriculum map. And so really taking a look at the course and the enduring understandings that are within that course, and then with those enduring understandings, thinking about what disciplinary literacy integration, what 21st century rigor and relevance is going to be a part of it, and then overall your materials, your resources, and your technology. And then it moves into the unit part and breaking that down as well. And so you have kind of the 5 or 6 sheets that go along with the paper version of it that you can use then to do your typing in and just kind of planning an outline of that course before you dig right in. Or like some of you may prefer as well, you want to sit right down at the computer and begin that typing in of your curriculum map, and that is fine as well. So 2 versions, the template paper pencil version, or you can begin right with Build Your Own Curriculum. The next section of the presentation really takes a closer look at Build Your Own Curriculum and each of those components, that inverted triangle of the course, the units, the topics, and the learning targets, and shows you some of the screenshots that come right from BYOC, so you have an idea of what it looks like in the actual program. We did include screenshots of an actual math class within our district, but that math class was entered before we established this process and trying to become more consistent. So it may not truly answer those questions or really be true big ideas or enduring understandings. And so I want you to keep that in mind. But again, the purpose was to show you the screenshots of each of those parts of the program. So when you're looking at the course level, there's some general information that you have to input, and that includes which department the course is aligned to, the grade level or levels that students would be in when they're taking this course. And then we're also trying to become consistent with the course names, so you can see an example of Grade 1 Math or Algebra 1, and what we recommend is that for high school, when it asks for the course code, that you use the one that is in the high school course description handbook, as well as number of credits obviously would be a high school term, and then you've got your duration of your class. Again, at looking and being consistent in how we name the courses that are in the program, we want you to be consistent and follow this format. High school level, you're going to use the course names that are in your Pulaski High School course book that gets revised every winter and then is shared with students as they select courses. For elementary and middle school, how we'd like you to name the courses is, if it's a math course and it's offered in grade 1, then it's grade 1 math. If it's a social studies course and it's offered in 8th grade, then it's a grade 8 social studies course. Be sure to capitalize the first letters of each of the words, but we don't want you to be using capital letters when you're entering the whole course title in. Continuing on within the course, after you've entered the general course information, you then enter your course overview and your rationale. And again, look back at those guiding questions of what would be included in there. And then before you really proceed with units, and this is part of Build Your Own Curriculum that we'd like to change, but we're not able to, remember you go to the enduring understandings and you plan those out and your 3 to 5 big ideas, which we'll spend some time on. And then you come back, and that's really where you start to look at your units and your topics. So still within the course is the additional course information, and that's where the enduring understandings fall, the disciplinary literacy, and those are really digging back into the Common Core literacy and the content area standards for social studies, science, and other areas. And then your materials and resources and technology that have been board adopted. And in some cases, especially at the high school level, you have the prerequisites for that course, and if there are any, please list those at that point. So this would be the screenshot of that additional course information. Again, like I said before, this was just a screenshot, doesn't necessarily follow the consistency that we're looking at this point, but it at least provides you with how it is set up in Build Your Own Curriculum so you have an idea of when you go in to enter that. So let's spend a little bit more time on unpacking your content standards and finding what the big ideas are, and then converting those into the enduring understandings. So when you're starting to look at your content standards, you're looking really for those big ideas. And usually there's several big ideas, but you put them into phrases. So I guess what you're looking at is if you had to come up with 4 to 5 phrases to describe what you want students to learn in a year or a semester worth of your class, what would they be? Or you might look at it by asking some other questions like, at the end of the year of the course, how would students define the important ideas that they learned in my class? Also, if for elementary or middle school level, if you had to design a bulletin board for when students came in and you left it up the whole year, what key ideas would you want to include on it that students would be aware of? And big ideas can also be that lasting value beyond your class when they're out of school, that they would continue to come back and focus on how important that class was. So this graphic shows you kind of big ideas are worth the understanding, and those really convert into the enduring understandings. Granted, there are things that are important to know and do in the class, and those are usually the foundational concepts and skills, and those really become your units and your topics. And then there's just some things that are really worth being familiar with, and they're nice to know, but they're really not the big ideas of the course or the enduring understandings that students are going to value years after they've taken your course. So here we provided you some examples of big ideas for math and social studies, and you can kind of see how they take that big idea and they show you some of the nice to know ideas. So specific on the social studies example, the authors of the Federalist, that's just a nice thing to know. It's not a big idea that is going to be an enduring understanding years down the road that the student needs to understand. You can see that there's some foundational knowledge that we do want our students to know the 3 branches of government and what their roles are and what they're able to do and not do. But the big idea really comes down to when you look at the dilemmas of a democracy and the separation of powers, that's the enduring understanding that the student walks away and has value in after they've completed the course. The next step of the process is really to take the 4 to 5 big ideas that you came up with and turn them into your 3 to 5 enduring understandings for that whole course. And really those are the ones that have the lasting value that's beyond the classroom walls when those students leave. Here's an example of a tech ed one where you can see the big idea was architecture and construction technologies change over time. But when we put it into an enduring understanding, we use a starter phrase such as collaborative self-directed students will understand, or the student will understand, or there might be some other starter sentences that you use. But you can see that then it moves into that the students understand that building phases, systems, techniques change over time and are related to the needs and the wants of the society. Here's a graphic or a picture of a course, kind of how this would be structured a little bit. So you've got your course name, and this just includes one enduring understanding or big idea that was turned into an enduring understanding. But generally, there'd be 3 or 5 of those, and then your units are connected to that. And then obviously the various standards that you're using are connected within that unit, the topics and the learning targets. And so even though this isn't fully developed, this hopefully gives you an idea of that system, of whether you're doing it on the paper pencil version or you're entering it right into the curriculum app. This is the structure and the important structure of putting that course together with those enduring understandings. After you've spent that time really developing out the course enduring understandings as well as the additional course information is where then you start to move within the unit. And so some key information or just general unit information that's entered is that unit name, the duration of the unit, and the description of the unit. And you can see on here is also where you would start to add your units as well that connect back to those enduring understandings that you developed. When you get within the unit, that's where you start to think about the topics that fall within each of those units. And again, one of our heavy lifting areas or the bulk of our work falls into those essential questions in learning, which on some future slides we'll spend some time on. You also start to dig into that academic vocabulary as well as the disciplinary vocabulary that students need within your units. You start to develop the strategies that you're going to use to assess student learning. And then you get more specific in terms of materials, resources, and technology that you would be using within that specific unit. Again, a screenshot of when you're drilling it down and you're starting to get into the topics and the additional unit information of the information that you would find in Build Your Own Curriculum and entering that information. So let's spend some time on the essential questions within your units. These are those how and why questions. They're more open-ended questions. You really want to avoid what questions unless they kind of are overarching. You want to state those still in student-friendly language. And what you really want are questions that provoke inquiry into those enduring understandings that you came up with at the beginning of the course. So this graphic just shows you some of that information with them being that there's really no single answer, that you could argue them, that they kind of open up the doorway and they lead to the big ideas, and they can be reoccurring, they could be and should be revisited, and they just spark that interest and raise other questions for the students. So here are a couple sample essential questions for art, science, English, as well as social studies. Some samples of those are in what way do effective writers hook and hold their readers? Who were the winners and who were the losers in the Industrial Revolution? How does art reflect as well as shape culture? And a biology one in terms of how are form and function related in biology? And just another extension of that in terms of math and English language arts, showing you an example within those. And still these are in the big idea understanding rather than totally being turned into the enduring understandings. But you can kind of see the essential questions that fall with those. So for example, let's take the world literature one. Their big idea was really looking at great literature from various cultures and exploring those themes and revealing the aspects of the human condition. And so the essential question within that unit when they wrote it was, how can stories from other places and times be about me? Depending on how you like to work, you may take and develop all of your units within that course and then move into developing the topics within each of those units, or you may take the first unit and develop your topics within that unit and then proceed to the next unit. Paper pencil version, you may get it all down into that format and then enter it in. So it just kind of depends on your style and what you're comfortable with. But within Build Your Own Curriculum, after you've entered a unit or your units, the next level that you would move into is the topics. And so when we're looking at topic details, you can see what falls into those. You've got your topic name, the duration of that topic, which is usually within days, just a short description of that topic, and sometimes there isn't additional information that's needed, that just by the topic name, it gives you enough information. So that may be an area that you don't enter anything for. And then that moves into your learning targets and the activities that are associated within those learning targets. Here's a screenshot of the topic details. So it still takes your general information and shows you which course it's involved in, which grade levels, the unit, and the unit duration. But then you start to enter in where your topic name is, how many days is the duration, and the description of that topic. Again, you can see when you're looking at it that you can add a topic as you continue to go through. You can copy topics because we said some of those may fall into different units. And we also haven't talked about some of these other features, but you've got your save button to make sure that as you're going through each of these pages that you are saving it so you don't lose it. Your cancel and back button to move back to the units or to get out of what you've been working on. Your spell check, you can also delete options. So remember that those are there. You've also got your quick toolbar or quick navigate, which allows you to go back to learning targets or into activities. And we didn't also talk about these attachments, but you are able to put attachments in here as you go along as well. That would be accessed by other people within the unit. We've discussed that one of the reasons that we want to have consistent curriculum maps and put these into Build Your Own Curriculum as our storing warehouse is that we really are looking for consistency in what we teach to our students. For example, I have twin boys, and You always hope that when they take classes and it's the same class, regardless of who the teacher is, that they're getting the same information so that when they finish that course, the outcomes are the same. And so to give you an example, if teacher A spends 3 days on equivalent fractions, but teacher B only spends 2 weeks on equivalent fractions, they're really not teaching the same thing, and thus our students aren't getting the same learning. And so it's also looking at that consistency of what our students get in the classrooms and that they have the same outcomes when they finish those courses. The last section of the Build Your Own Curriculum and your curriculum maps is the learning targets, which again is one of those heavy lifting areas that you probably spend a good 25 to 40% of your time in developing. And so when you look at this section, and it falls kind of within the topic section, you not only have your learning target, but you have the instructional activities that go along with that, the assessment of learning target, and then the linkage to the standards. And so this is that back loading that we talked about, that you're coming back to those standards, that you also started with the front loading part as well. So just a quick screenshot of the learning targets. Like we had mentioned, there were things that we would have changed on this in terms of having the activities also on the learning target page, but we're not able to do that because it's a consistent program. And so that's why we want you to think of topic and learning target really going together. But this does give you an idea then of what the screenshot or what those pages look like for learning targets. So in our district over the past 4 to 5 years, we have spent quite a bit of time on learning targets and having that as an expectation within our classrooms, mainly being that the research shows that when students do understand the learning targets and they value those and they see those in their daily lessons, their performance goes up at least 20% than when the learning targets aren't clear for them. And so this is another one of those heavy lifting areas where you're going to spend more of your time. It could be 25 to 40% of your work within a curriculum map is really writing those learning targets and making sure that they align to the assessment and the instructional activities as well as the standards for your content area. So just to reiterate what learning targets are, they're specific to what we want students to know and be able to do for that lesson, that specific day, and they're directly then connected to that daily formative assessment that you do within that lesson. Also, to emphasize what they aren't, learning targets are not what the teacher is doing, so they're not the inputs of the learning process. They're really the expected results or the outputs of the learning process. They're not the activities, nor are they the student products. One of the things that you can do specific with learning targets as well as other parts of your curriculum map is that you can look at what other districts have done for them. You can copy or modify those as well as other components of the map. One state, Indiana, which is also a BYOC subscriber, they've done some extensive work, especially with the Common Core ELA and math and literacy in the content area. So if you're not understanding those, that might be a place to begin and be able to copy some of those over for your courses. And in some cases, and not all cases, the Common Core might be specific enough that they've been unpacked for you and you don't need to really change them that much to turn them into learning targets. But I would say most of the time they aren't in those student-friendly terms that we're looking for. There are some resources right within BYOC, and it's actually in a section on the left-hand drop-down columns that you'll see when you are in BYOC of where you can get help and training, and they're actually called the BYOC Help and Training section. So this link is live, and you are able to access that. Some of the things that you can do is dig into what some other communities have done for best practices. There are training documents as well as training videos, and they're how-to ones that you can look to see how you might be, if you don't understand how to add a unit or how to add a topic or how to link your standards. They're quick, short videos or documents that you can take a look at that walk you through that process. After you have your curriculum map entered in to build your own curriculum, there's one final step that you need to take care of, and that's going through Build Your Own Curriculum Course Review form, which is linked here in the PowerPoint that you're previewing. So before you submit that form to a peer reviewer, Please take time to complete the requested information and a self-reflection checklist. And in order to do that, you'll have to refer back to the curriculum elements in BYOC. Again, that's linked here. That will help you to look at how many words or phrases or questions that you may need to be answering as you filled out your curriculum map. After that, you can submit it to a peer reviewer of your choice, and generally that's going to be a colleague within your grade level or your department or your content area, and they'll go through and do the same review process. You'll have to obviously share, or they'll have to have access to BYOC in order to do that. And once that peer review has been completed, submit the form, the BYOC curriculum course review form, to Learning Services Department, where a district reviewer will make a final review of the course, and then if all is set to go with it, it will be published in BYOC. Once that has happened, then you'll be compensated for your curriculum work. Overall, our goal is just to be more consistent in the terminology and how our curriculum maps are set up in BYOC, so this should hopefully help with that process. We have a team of BYOC trainers and curriculum map facilitators that are available to you. They either have been trained or will be receiving training shortly. That includes myself, Jenny Grace Alney, Director of Learning Services. My administrative assistant, Daniela Simpkins, is available to answer when it comes to the technology components of BYOC, such as if you can't remember your login or password. Also, if you need her to create courses in there for you to be able to access. So those types of questions can go directly to her. We'll also be training or have trained our principals and associate principals at the building levels. Amy Allman, our instructional technology coordinator, our literacy coaches, Becky Wellens at the 6-12 level, and Rhoda Wood at K5, as well as our teaching and learning team, technology team, Macy Roberts, Clay Reisler, and Joe Diefenthaler. Hopefully after previewing and taking a look at this presentation, you have a better understanding of Pulaski Community School District's curriculum mapping, the terminology that goes along with that, the structure of what's important that you take a look at, and then the process of finalizing those curriculum maps as well. If you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. We certainly can answer those questions for you and help you, guide you through the process. Thank you.